Now, our next guest also just celebrated Ramadan and then Eid with her family right after attending ATTD in Barcelona, where we met, which was very exciting. We have Eritrea here from the US, and she's going to tell us all about her personal journey with diabetes. Eritrea, it's so nice to see you here. The stage is yours.
Hi. Hi, Steffi. It's good to see you virtually. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you to so much to everyone who shared their stories before me. You guys are so inspirational, and I have so much love for Mohammed and all the guys in Ukraine who shared their stories. I'm really thinking of you guys and praying for you all. Thank you guys to the dedoc team for having me. It was a pleasure meeting you all at the ATTD. I'm so happy to be here today at dedoc Day. I want to start off by telling you guys a little bit about myself. For some of us, our stories with diabetes really start at diagnosis, but I'm so lucky because mine started before I was born. So personally, both my parents are immigrants to the United States. My dad is an immigrant from Eritrea. He was part of the child militia war there and was a fighter in the war from the ages of 9 to 17. My mom is also an immigrant to the United States and grew up in Mexico. She moved to America illegally so that she could send money back home to help raise her family and so that everybody could go to school. I'm lucky enough that my mom graduated from college when she was 19 years old. So a lot of the things that I know, I learned from her. It's important for me to tell you guys this backstory because it explains not just where I come from, but that my home has never really been a place. It's always been and will always be my family and the people that surround me. Because I'm so interracial, I'm really lucky to look like this. It comes with its own sets of privileges and it's also its own set of confusion. It can sound really interesting and warm and exciting, but as a child, experiencing being so many things at once can be really confusing and conflicting. It also doesn't help to get diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in childhood because it's an additional identity that you later have to take on and identify with. I was 9 years old when I was diagnosed in 2002. And like so many of our diagnosis stories, mine's not really very different. Some symptoms of frequent urination, excessive weight loss, and thirst. My parents took me to our PCP who confirmed my type 1 diagnosis, and they later rushed me to the hospital. I remember specifically sending them home. And I am the eldest daughter of immigrants after all, so it was my role to take charge and just go with it. A lot of the work of having type 1 in the United States is paperwork. Because I was the primary English speaker in my household, a lot of that paperwork fell to me. And I learned really early on that it can be really complicated to have diabetes in a country where healthcare is an issue and so can finances. I specifically remember, though, the first time that my diabetes tried to shrink my culture. So it was an instance with a dietitian where my mom was taking me to get some instruction on how to carb count, things like that. And the dietitian was insisting on taking away tortillas from my diet. And I remember my mom being really, really instrumental and very direct with this lady in her not so great English that if other children with diabetes could eat bread, that I could eat tortillas. And I think this was a pivotal moment for me because it was the first time that my culture was shrink to fit within a box, and my parents fought back on that. As I continued to get older, I saw other ways where diabetes would overlap into my life when maybe it wouldn't for others. I am a Muslim, so I remember people telling me that it was immodest as a Muslim woman to take my insulin in public. I was very lucky to go to a school for all Islamic people. And I remember that my teachers would ask me to keep it to myself, but I was empowered by my family and my parents to not do that. So I started taking my insulin wherever I wanted. And I also think this was another pivotal moment for me, probably the first time that my culture was trying to shrink my diabetes. As I got older and more comfortable with my diagnosis of type 1, I kept running into things that would shock and confuse me. There was a few years in my 20s that I experienced food allergies that made me really ill. And I lost a lot of weight. But I remember being ignored by doctors because I had diabetes and people thinking that it was my fault. I remember that that was the first time that I felt that my experience as a Black woman was turning into an issue with my diabetes. In 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, I posted a picture of my backpack on Instagram. I wanted to explain to people how much preparation I took to have my diabetes, but what I didn't expect was for so many people to be interested in my diabetes supplies and in my day-to-day care. What I also didn't expect was to find a whole community of people behind a few hashtags on a platform that we just call Instagram. And I thought I was just posting a photo. It's really funny how life does somersaults and things turn. We do things with an intention and it can set us on an entirely different life path and journey. In 2020, I also went to a coffee shop to meet with other people with diabetes. And there I met someone who many of you might know, the founder and creator of Diabetics Doing Things, Rob Howe. I ended up getting a job working at Diabetics Doing Things, a place where telling stories of people from different walks of life is our primary goal. Our tagline is that we tell the amazing stories of people living with diabetes. Talk about getting a dream job. From my work at Diabetics Doing Things, I've learned how across the world people with diabetes are all telling their unique stories from their own perspectives. Whether it's Iman in Egypt, Cynthia in Lebanon, Jorge in Mexico, Taylor in Texas, or Andy in Minnesota, the stories that I've been trusted to tell have all been because I can relate to these stories. I remember how uncomfortable I was as a child being so many things at once, and it now feels like I was wearing different identities of myself to try to fit into the box that people assumed I was meant to be in. It was in these last 2 years of my work at Diabetics Doing Things and now the Diatribe Foundation that I realized that my ability to understand multiple complex human situations is really just my superpower. I don't have to be just one thing because I'm just supposed to be me, just like all of us are just supposed to be us. I have been trusted to help tell these stories of others, and I get to learn so much because I am who I am. That's incredible in itself. Nowadays, I feel less time feeling lonely for being different and more time finding ways to bond with other people via Instagram, the internet, and living with diabetes who are experiencing things that I can't imagine or things that I've gone through. I've learned to bond with people by listening and learning from them. And I feel lucky that it's my job to do that. I think it's so important for us to open doors for people who look like us, but I also think it's important to swing open those doors for people who don't look like us and who we don't think that we can understand, because it's important for their stories to also be told. Those are the stories that can really make the difference for others, and those are the stories that made a difference for me. So I really just want to share how much it's important that we're all so different, that we all have stories to tell, and the importance of listening to those stories. If you want to hear more, please definitely check out Diabetics Doing Things. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere you listen to podcasts, as well as the Diatribe Foundation, where we write articles to help people with diabetes every day. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a million, Eritrea. That was so insightful. I think intersectionality is a topic that is never talked about enough, and I'm glad that from telling other people's stories as part of your jobs, that you joined us today here to tell your own story. And really, that's what Doc Day is for. So everyone out there, if you think that you have a story to tell or that yours is one that isn't told often enough, please contact us. We want to highlight these stories and give you this platform. So thanks again, Eritrea.